So moving eastward towards the former Soviet Union, we're going to hear from Professor L.T. Hormel from the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, who is going to tell us about her work on masculinity and sustainable gardening in the Ukraine. Using data that she collected more than a decade ago, LT is currently writing about the tension between the traditional family gardens and country homes, known as dachas, and the increasingly dominant system of industrial agriculture in that part of the world. In many ways, this research in the field of rural sociology is profoundly relevant to the cultural tensions we see in the agricultural regions of our own country, including here on the Palouse. This is the kind of international research that clearly sheds light on our stakeholders in the state of Idaho. So please welcome LT.
Hello, everyone. This research is based off of many years of me being over in post-Soviet societies, and I'm continuing it into looking at other places for societies to address changes during social change, I guess, a little repetitive. I've been supported in Russian language and culture from Eastern Washington University, University of Oregon, and have received lots of research support through the organizations listed via IREX, Fulbright Hayes, University of Idaho, Worcester State University, and my alma maters of yesteryears. I studied as an undergraduate and graduate student in Soviet, post-Soviet societies, the great changes going on, and I noticed that people had to increasingly deal with non-market types of activities to try to cope with social change. One of those being dachas, or what we call summer gardens. The municipal government of Komsomolsk, Ukraine invited me in 2001 to prepare research to do a quality of life study over in their city, and so I went there in 2002 for the first time in my life. Most of my work had been in Russia, so I went there in 2002 as my first adventure to Ukraine. I recruited 10 Ukrainian researchers. I conducted my own follow-up interviews with households, 28 of those also with experts. And then I also conducted ethnographic recordings of everyday life, both in the municipal government offices and the city. Komsomolsk itself is a company town that extracts iron ore. 38% of the workers in Komsomolsk are employed there. 64% of those workers are men. And during this time of economic change, a lot of men lost jobs, and it led to what researchers call masculinity crisis, that a large number of working class men especially experience dramatic changes in their status. In fact, status loss is what they experienced. And this was seen in many frightful kinds of statistics, such as an increasing level of suicide rates among men in Ukraine and Russia, much more so than even women in these societies. And this resulted largely from this job loss, but also from alcoholism, maybe from that job loss, as well as the conflicts in Georgia and Chechnya that were taking place at the time. So as you see here, men's life expectancy was way lower than most other industrialized countries. 54% of mine workers, for instance, even just in Komsomolsk, often couldn't count on having pay. So there were ways that I wanted to explore that we understand the crisis, but what are men doing who are working class who are coping with this? How do they remain healthy if they are healthy? And so this led me to ask questions about the role of dachas, or what we call household gardens, where urban residents travel to be in the countryside to raise food. In Komsomolsk, 51% of households have a dacha and raise food. And largely that's because so many of them were issued gardens via Poltava Gok because they could not pay their workers. Dachas are one of the main ways in which labor-intensive types of crops are produced. So for instance, labor-intensive, non-export agricultural production of berries and fruits, those are provided through subsistence gardens and dachas. So they are a major source for families to be fed. And as you see here, this is a graph from the survey that shows that most of the dacha plots were distributed right at the beginning of the 90s when manufacturing was plummeting and the only resource that these industries had was the land that they still owned to give people an opportunity to raise food. During interviews, though, I found that professional men who had not really felt much status loss, they'd figured out how to cope, tended to see these dacha plots as a Soviet relic. So here you see the mayor of the city kind of laughing about it, and he followed this kind of idea that we might as well just industrialize all of that and make large scapes with them. Whereas someone like Pavel, whose hand you see there, that's his winemaking system that he bragged about, felt a lot of pride in being able to raise food for his family. His status wasn't lost because even though he didn't get wages, he was able to be physical and be a man on these gardens. So my ultimate conclusions in this short and sweet talk are simply that dacha gardens are good for people's health. It keeps them from committing suicide, keeps them from being alcoholics, and even if they drink a lot, they're getting physical and working it out of their systems. But not so fast. Women don't enjoy that as much. And so what I also found is that women, while men and women worked a lot together in the countryside, women were stuck doing the canning, folks, and that's not as fun. So that's what we might call the patriarchal renaissance is still alive and well in that setting. My follow-up work is going to look at these kinds of healthy ways that we might take for granted in the midst of social change and in the midst of us commodifying a lot of things in our lives. And these are places that are safe havens for families to integrate their lives that are kind of outside of all of these other kinds of forces. I also have been so lucky to work with faculty from CNR, such as Lisette Waits and others, and also from CALS, who have allowed me to be part of their programs with NSF to work on student international research endeavors as well. So I want to continue those things. Ultimately, I thank you so much for inviting me here, and I'm so thankful to be done with this.
Thank you, LT. Let me give you this and a thank you note. And thank you very much for being here. Thanks, LT.
Thank you, Janet.